a great bartender. If you need a beer or wine or anything back there as well. I'm looking at a very sad face in here, but please, before you leave, take a look at the artwork. It's called The Pursuit of Happiness. And that's what we want for all our kids, so it's very appropriate in education. So take a look at that. Over here too, as you come in the door, you may notice there are a lot of teacher items. Teacher and school-related items, most of those given to us by Sunny Story. Thank you, Sunny. So please, at any time tonight, make a bid on those. Appreciate if you would wear those in the pursuit of happiness and in support of the campaign. So those are over there as well, too. I also wanted to thank Sunny Story for all of the after-school nutrition drinks that we have. Along with my mother-in-law, who also made some monster cookies. And my wife, Susan. I wanted to recognize some people here, some trustees over here. Molly Donahue, who is running for the Iowa House. We'd love to have her there with us. And my own Senator, Rob Poe. One of our local school board members from Cedar Rapids Schools, Gary Anwalt. Let's see, have I gotten everything, Susan? I got everything. All right. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing someone that I know well, Tammy Worrell. She's a teacher from Cedar Rapids, serving her second term as president of the Iowa State Education Association. In addition to the National Board certification in 1999, Tammy has received her bachelor's degree in elementary education from the University of Northern Iowa, a master's degree in educational technology, and her doctorate in education in teacher leadership from Walden University. Dr. Tammy Worrell was a trainer for the National Education Association's Family School Community Partnership and a presenter for the Center for Collaborative Solutions. She was named the winner of the Mildred Middleton Mentoring Leadership Award in 2006. She served on the Iowa Department of Education's Council on Education Development and on the Iowa Department of Education's Assessment Task Force. She is married with 3 children. Her husband Mike is here. She has a daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren. So please welcome Dr. Tammy Worrell.
So, funny story about Art and I, right, Art? Maybe, is that okay?
Yeah.
He doesn't know what it is. So. I applied to be the facilitator of the mentoring program in the Cedar Rapids School District many years ago. And at the same time, the district found this guy from Kansas?
Oklahoma, yeah.
It was south, that's all I knew was like south, really. And he came up and interviewed for the same job. And yeah, so I found this out later. It was a very tough decision for the district. They had an internal candidate that was pretty well liked with the union, right? And they had an external candidate that was excellent. And what they did was they made a job for Art, and they allowed me to have a job that I wanted to work with new teachers. And it was a win-win for all of us because Art was able to come to the district and be a part of helping as a social studies facilitator downtown. And what Art has never forgotten, no matter what he does, are our kids. And he was that way in every meeting I've ever been at with him, from the schoolhouse when we were in these facilitator meetings together as facilitators, and then to watch him take that to the State House and listen to him from his heart. And when you elect Art, because many of you vote for Art, you elect someone else. And we have a twofer here from our area that really helps us. I mean, Susan is there understanding policy, helping all of us. If I can't talk to Art, I can talk to Susan, and that information is not a bad game of telephone. It is a really good game of telephone. So what we have here is a dynamic duo, and while they don't have someone running against them right now, that spot is so important. And this spot, getting someone to work with Art and help us is so necessary. So we've got to get Molly elected, and we have to take back control of the House. So Art works is standing off, and they can only do so much. So Art and his colleagues in the House, and I know we're going to do some question time later, and that might be a time where Senator Hogue can help us as well. But our friends in the House have tried to get funding passed for our students. For the past 7 years, the Republicans have basically broken the law, and they have not passed funding in time so that any of our school districts, school board member here, know what we can do. We have no idea what we can fund or when we can fund it. It is ridiculous. And I think about our state quarter all of the time, and our state quarter has a schoolhouse on it. That's what our families fought for. That's why people moved to Iowa. I was in California for a year when we had our very first child 27 years ago, moved back as soon as he was born so that we could have him in Iowa. It's not the same. When I was in school here, I went to Cleveland, and that was the year that Robert Ray, Governor Ray, our last good Republican governor, allowed many, many families to come to Iowa and to live. And at Cleveland Elementary, we were the first ELL program. Some of you might remember that. And I sat right next to children who just came from Laos. That's what we did. I didn't think it was unusual. I didn't think it was different. It was nothing new to me. But what we're doing now with our ELL population is so ridiculously sad. And our teachers are being asked to do more and more with less, with children with even more trauma. Those kids came with families, and they had been in refugee camps, but they knew they were coming to a place where they were going to be loved and taken care of. And now our kids are coming with trauma that we've never, ever experienced before. So when I talk with our ELL teachers, they're not trying to just to teach language. They're trying to teach children just to feel like they can survive. And that's something that we didn't go to school to learn. You know, many of you are teachers in the room. We didn't get trained on trauma control. While we're doing all that, we're getting funding less and less. We have more children in our classroom, and we have more accountability we have to show with this. And to be quite frank, we're feeling pretty beat up. Not by you all in the room, but by a Republican agenda. And they've done a pretty good job of it on a national level. So the cuts have hit us pretty hard. You know that. We're seeing children leave. We're seeing them go to, because of large class size, they'll go to Linn-Mar. They'll start homeschooling. They don't like what's happening. One bill that I know you fought hard for to get a change, well actually it was a stay. We had a hold in third grade retention. And we can talk more about this later if you want to, but one thing that we were able to do was get a year's stay on whether we retain our third graders if they're reading at grade level according to a test at the end of third grade. We know the studies show that's a really bad idea for many reasons. And we also know that it's going to impact our children in poverty and our children of color more than it is kids that look like my kids. And that's a problem. So House Art and many of his colleagues and Senator Hogue helped to put a stay on it, but the only reason that is because they didn't fund it. This was governor's program. This was a great idea that we're going to do this, and then decided not to fund any of it. So the money has not gone where the governor's mouth is, and while the Senate has tried and they have fought for every dime we were able to get, we were not even at the same level of growth that the governor asked for, thanks to, you're not colleagues in the House. Our Senate fights hard, our House members fight hard, and I feel bad because often The Senate gets a ton of kudos because they save us and they keep a reprieve from things like taking children's money for school and fixing the water quality problem that our kids didn't create. They fight hard and they get a lot of kudos for that. You guys are fighting just as hard and probably getting beat up more because you're not feeling the wins and the accolades. So that was another big issue, the water quality issue. We've lost a lot of funding in the AEAs. And AEAs are what give our most vulnerable children the tools they need to succeed. So if you don't know about our AEA program, that is really what helps any of our special ed department feel more secure in what they're doing with our kids. They're the support system. And I know a lot of federal funding comes for special ed, but in our area, the devastating cuts, $5 million last year, and I want to say $27 million over the last 4 or 5 years to the AEAs. That's a lot when you compound that every year. And we wonder why we're struggling and why it's so hard. It's not a wonder to me when I look at what's happened. So we have good news. We have candidates that can win. And Molly, I've heard good things. Just today I heard good things. We have a path to make this better and to put Iowa schools back where they need to be. And that is to take back the House, to keep the Senate, make it stronger, so if any of our senators decide to do something else even bigger, we're not worried about it, right? We have the path, and we can do it. But it takes everybody in here talking to their family, their friends, people you're afraid to go talk to. Talk about education, because people care. Whether they're a homeschool parent, whether they're a Catholic school parent, they still want this to be a good community. And we remind them that's who's going to take care of us when we're in a nursing home. I don't get to ask, were you homeschooled? Did you go to Catholic school when they, hook me up? We want everybody, no matter what zip code they live in, to have an awesome education, to want to go to school. One last piece. I'm on a new task force, because that's what you do, on chronic absenteeism. That's the lieutenant governor's big thing right now. So while we go, oh, that's a great idea, step back, and I also wonder, why are we doing this? Just curious. Chronic absenteeism, when you see that out there, it also has to do with whether your parent called it, whether it was an excused absence or not. They don't care when we talk about absenteeism. Teachers are nodding. Whether you have asthma, you couldn't make it in, whether you've been in traction, doesn't matter. If you miss 18 days in a school year, so 10%, just 2 days a month, that's chronic absenteeism. And that's our issue. It's educators' issue as to why that child isn't in school. Even if they're sick and they need to be home and we've taken homework to them and we've worked with them, it doesn't matter. But what I want to say back and what I have said to Linda Fandel, and I will say Lieutenant Governor, is a lot of reasons kids don't come has to do with stress, has to do with bullying. And when you have 32 in your class, it's even harder to get a handle on that. It's not an excuse, it's just harder. And when that's happening, it does matter that our schools are being underfunded. I can take a lot of that back to not taking care of our kids. So I'll be interested to see what that task force comes out with. I think in the end, they might do a PR idea of get your kids to school, it's that important. So, and if that's the best or the worst that comes out of it, okay, I don't know. But I want to thank you for being here because you care enough about our kids to be here on a Saturday night. And I get to tell other people that there are people who really care about what you do. And I can tell our teachers, people come out on Saturday night because they care about you, they care about getting the right people elected, and it gives our members the fuel they need to go out and talk to people too, because they're tired at the end of the day as well. So thank you for being here, and with that, I would like to turn it over to our candidate, Art State.
There's a couple more things I want to say about Tammy. I've known her for 15 years, and she has this perpetual smile. And you saw a little bit today of her, you saw a little bit of her relentless passion for Iowa's kids and their education. So thank you, Tammy. I appreciate your support very much. And you may not all notice it until you start looking around, but class sizes have grown. The average class sizes in, I think it's 3 to 5, or up to 20, maybe 22 right now. And we have a goal of keeping those down. The state does it down to 17. And we're nowhere near that. We're going the other direction. And for 6 years now, 6 years, the budget that we provided for our schools is so lean that they've had to cut back on classes and offerings and teachers and so on and so forth, everything in our school system. And again this year in the Cedar Rapids School District, they cut back the early language programs. Spanish is no longer offered. I've had parents in my district call me and are crying when they heard about this. Those are one of the best things that their kids have is learning those languages. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the funding is adequate so we can do that. Starting the year, I just heard recently that Butte is down 15 teachers in their classrooms, another 15. Cedar Rapids is down another 12 high school teachers. And Des Moines is down 70 more teachers, positions that have been eliminated because of the lack of funding. So it's beyond serious. We have to get more than 2.25% of funding for our school to do that. And she mentioned the ADAs, which is the group. The ADA, those institutions are the ones that offer many of the services for our special needs kids and other training for those that deal with special needs kids in our schools. The teachers get their training from them. And we know that they have never restored the money that they were cut back in the recession. So they're down about $20 million a year as well, being underfunded. So those issues also play another role in whether it's the districts have to make up the difference, families have to make up the services to those kids. Just recently, door knocking. I meet a lot of people door knocking. I always meet educators. A lot of them know that I'm an educator as well, but they'll share things with me. So right at home. Just in the last week I had a fourth grade teacher, and she told me that her class size is 26 students. She has 26 students and no para. How do you do that in fourth grade? I can't imagine that. But if we want those students to have individual attention, to have their highest, their best opportunity for doing the best they can, they're going to need more attention than one teacher can provide in the classroom. It'll impact them the rest of their life. That's how important I think that is. I also met another teacher who was 3 and 4-year-olds. How many 3 and 4-year-olds think you can handle? 25 she has. Now, she's got a pair to help her assistant. But it turns out that the bathroom is clear down the other side of the school building. So far in the first week, the para has pretty much taken the kids to the bathroom and back. So that's going to be an interesting year for those kids as well. So you hear it every day, you see it every day, we talk about it every day in the house. We need more individuals like Molly that help us make a difference when it comes to a vote to make sure that our schools get the adequate funding that they need. Now that's K through 12. We also need preschool. Right now, we cover about 50% of the preschoolers that apply and want to be in the 3 and 4-year-old program in our schools. But we could fund the whole thing. We don't. So half of the kids, they said, well, there's a waiting list for these kids. A waiting list for a 4-year-old? Not a 4-year-old next year. Next year's 5 years. They're not on a waiting list. They just lose that opportunity. A lost opportunity for that whole group of kids. We'll continue to do that every year. Our community colleges, we've done some great things in community colleges, but they got $3 million last year. In addition to, I think it was $3 million Senator Code, right? But they're tight as well, and you know we underfunded all of our universities. And tuition's going up by $1,700. Roughly in all 3 of the universities per year, up to, I forgot what the total amount is, 17,000, around $7,200 again this year, tuition increases. It's been out of range for many, many students. So we've got to look at how we're going to do that as well with other universities and make sure that everyone has that opportunity to attend college if they do the work. And we'll make sure they can afford it. So, thank you for being here, and I want to answer any of your questions that you have. Yes.
Art and Tammy, I'm curious, I know we paint a broad brush when we say the Republicans, and they're not doing what we want them to do. Can you name any individual Republicans who are on our side, who are lone voices? Are there any at all?
Not very many.
No, I'll tell you what happens is when, they have more than 50 votes. They only have 56 votes. So they'll wait until they've defeated something, and then one of the others may vote with us.
Right.
But I think that's more of a screen for them, protect them against voting back home than any commitment. They are lockstep together.
We do have some that aren't running again because they think they probably felt in their heart. I'm just gonna guess. Don't you think?
Yes, I would say, well, I mentioned Sanderson, because you remember, I do believe that he was, I wouldn't call it heartbroken, but he was just so frustrated with his own party. He's an
They
educator.
just can't see it.
And I even suspect the chair of the education committee will for the same reason.
I guess I was hopeful, knowing that there are Republicans who have stepped away from the Trump wagon, they've had the testicular fortitude to do that. And I was hopeful that maybe there'd be some that would stand for education too.
What's the number of homeschool parents? And this is not a, that are also in the house. Not because I find that a problem that's their choice, because I'm 100% on a parent has the right to do what's best for their child. But when
Roughly 15 to 17.
that's a large number,
Vice chair.
it's a large number. So
The vice chair of education. and
of
the
education
chair,
is
The
a
former Speaker of the
Former
House.
Speaker of the House did it as well.
yeah.
Maybe 2% of the population.
It seems to be an overabundance of voice.
Almost
Yes.
20% of
Yes.
our house that is supposed to support public education.
All the way back there.
Yes. People don't really realize this, and we've never ever really stuck to it. But you basically have 30 days to get an education bill passed. Never do it. What's wrong?
3 days.
So
30.
well,
30 days after the governor gives his budget to the House and Senate. But it used to be done, and it can be done. We can do it a year in advance. So we could have had it for this year already, but they won't do it.
So the pushback that what they told me was, sure, we'll do it, and it's zero, and they followed the law. So that shuts me up really fast, because is it easier to know everybody's getting zero, go balance your budget, or do we stand there and fight and fight and fight and help you to fight and try to drag our heels and other things and eke out the 2%? So if they could follow the law and say zero is a number.
I would like to see it flip-flopped, so that instead of the default being 0, it might be 6% while the road. So we don't change it to 6%.
The Gazette published a statewide list from the state database of the percentage of students in each school district that are vaccinated or not.
Do they publish it?
Yeah. A summary was in the newspaper, the whole thing was online.
I'm not aware of this.
This is like this week or last week.
No, it was just recently?
Yeah.
This week or last
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
Local was in the paper, the whole thing is online. Yeah. In any event, the Marion Homeschool District was near the top of not being vaccinated, if you follow that line.
Yeah.
That may be associated with the number of homeschoolers that are registered.
Yes. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. They still will be free range people eventually.
Robin and then Mary.
Art, and maybe Dr. Waldo too, what is the Republicans' end game in consistently not funding? I mean, what's the point? What are they trying to do by not funding education?
You really want me to answer that, Rod Lee? Because I heard it from a legislator at a convention out of state. It was at a conference, we were having breakfast, and he laid out what it was to his other friends that were there, some other conservatives from the rest of the country, what they were doing. And it was particular, they were wanting to move $220 million of the state's funds out of the public education and to go into what do they call ESAs, called educational savings accounts. So that's what we were talking about that morning at breakfast. And he said, well, we're not going to move that much. We're just going to, maybe kindergarten, first grade this year, but in 10 years, we won't have any public education in Ohio. It'll all be private.
I think the
That
more
was
you, and the more you eke away at different things and have public schools look like they're failing and not serving well, you build up a momentum that we aren't doing our job and that children aren't being served, so our money isn't going, even the little bit that we're still putting in isn't going to a good cause.
So if you look at the picture and you can see it, it's broad. Private prisons, privatize them. The medical stuff, privatize those. Privatize the public education. So all these things become private. Generates the economy supposedly and whatever, but everything's out of public control. Your school boards then and public education have no role. I can imagine, there's great public book companies like Pearson and Harvard, all these companies, but would you want them making the decisions on all of the education?
The big deal that they're doing is driving from Peter to pay Paul. What it really is, they don't want to stay away from the fact of let's give us a good increase and get these things settled. Look at all the other things, mental health. You got about 10 or 11 things that are screwed all the time.
I must say that does not represent all of the Republicans in the House. They're not all doing that, but there is a group that has caused a great deal of difficulty in their bills and being passed.
Well, that's at a national
Doesn't
level.
take-
I mean, that's not just here.
Mary?
Yeah, I've been a foster parent in Cedar Rapids for 18 years, and there are 500 children just in Cedar Rapids, not Hiawatha, Marion, Cedar Rapids, 500 children that are in family foster care in Cedar Rapids. And I was talking to Art about the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and those are being sexually abused, being physically abused, having a parent get beat up, having mental health challenges, a parent being incarcerated. I can't remember all of them, but there's quite a bit, and I don't know why that the Cedar Rapids School District is not teaching their teachers and paras about the ACEs, because it makes a big difference in the learning and the triggers that there are for my kids. My kids that I have in my home. And then all but 2 kids have had IEPs, and you really have to be smart on those IEPs and on top of it to advocate for your kids, because sometimes they're not being met. And I understand that the superintendent is having someone for federal with a fine-tooth comb going through all the IEPs, not just at Washington High School, but all the IEPs. Ramwood was told 2 Fridays ago.
What does IEP stand for?
Individual Education Plan.
As a special ed teacher at Washington High School, I teach driving individual education plans. We do know about ACEs. The problem is they can have a staff meeting and teach us about the ACEs and let us know that there are a few things that we can do. We can kind of step back and, when kids are having a problem and deal with them quietly and, after they're able to be dealt with and some other things. But the problem is that's a 4-hour, this is what it is. We need the money to be trained.
Right.
The AEA would train us. We need to have the time and the money to be trained. And that is, and it's not because there's no funding.
So the Cedar Rapids School District has shared with you.
We've all been, we've seen the videos, we've been told about them, we've had in-service.
Because when Virgil Gooding was alive, he was more than willing to train about post-traumatic stress disorder and the ACEs, but the former superintendent was not real open to helping with
All the new ones.
I want to say that I know Dr. Buck would like to do that as well, where they don't have the funds. This is another example of one of those many, many things that kids need. After-school programs, before-school programs. They need interventions in reading. There are a host of things that we could be doing if we had the funds to do in our schools. And once it's down to where you're at the point where you have to decide whether you have a class at all, whether you hire or fire a teacher, I mean, that's critical. It's beyond that. And these are the kinds of things. There's many, many things like what you're talking about that need to be in place and not there.
So when you have a child that's having a humongous meltdown in the classroom, you're the only teacher, you have the other students, how in the world are you supposed to continue the learning when you have this?
And you have a parent of the other children really take through this and handle
that. Right.
One piece I want you all to know is how we figure out student-teacher to teacher ratio. I think it's important people know when you see, and we're talking about 32, 26, that's bigger than 26 in classes, and when that happens, you'll see that somewhere it might say Cedar Rapids School District has a 14-to-1 ratio, and it drives me nuts. And people like you need to understand how they do that. The way that's done across the state is they take how many certified teachers are in a building, your counselor, your PE, your music, everybody, your title teachers, and they divide it by the number of students in the building, and that's how they get your number. So that is so not fair, including if your facilitator has a teaching degree. So all that is how they get that number. So people, smart people like you in the room, need to just share that.
Kelly?
I have a question in regards to ramifications of new federal legislation, our Every Student Succeeds Act. Fortunately, we are in a city where there are a lot of resources that our district and businesses that our district can tap into to develop a lot of those partnerships with the community to provide after-school services for kids and maybe some of the programs. But there are so many rural districts that have maybe one business for the entire community, obviously the state of Iowa is going to have to help facilitate some type of financial support to create these partnerships that is not going to be required by the federal law. So what's the likelihood of that us actually being able to do what's best for our kids and our communities with our current makeup of that?
In the rural community.
Are you talking about inequity in our rural communities?
Yeah.
There is an inequity.
Yeah, because I mean, like the majority of my family, like my nieces and nephews, or my siblings that teach, they're in Independence, West Delaware, Darmont, and they don't have the business supports that we have here in Cedar Rapids, and they're even greater.
I don't know. Those are another one of those challenges that we're going to have in the legislature, and we're going to have to figure out how that's going to be. I don't really know.
Yeah, that third grade reading thing is a big
Okay, so I have two questions for you. One is based on what we're doing here locally, and the other is the state, and I don't know if either you can address. Okay, so the first of those questions is, we know if there's defunding of the ADAs that are going on, that is going to disproportionately probably affect the most vulnerable students in our population. So I'm just curious, because we talk about millions here, millions there. Do you have an idea as to how many of these most vulnerable children are being directly impacted or affected by this defunding that's been occurring on a local level here in Cedar Rapids and also on a state level?
Yes. I wouldn't even venture guess.
I don't have numbers, but I can testify to what I hear from my constituents, that every person, every family member that I have met that has someone in one of those programs has seen cuts in the services.
Okay, so then the follow-up part of that is we know that ESL learners are becoming a larger and larger percentage of our population. Well, we already have a difficult enough time identifying children once they get into kindergarten, first grade, who are monolingual, who speak English as a mother tongue, being able to identify those children who have an achievement gap and who have perhaps a learning disability that's hidden. What are we doing for this ESL population where these disabilities become more and more hidden and don't become apparent until sometimes they're in middle school, and oftentimes we're getting into all kinds of other issues now because we haven't caught it. So what is being done either at the state level, or are you even recognizing this occurring in the local level?
Each of the last 4 years, we try to get additional funding for that specifically for ESL, and it failed in the House.
Yeah, Senate has passed that repeatedly. Supplemental funding and also an extension of the time period. Right now, we really cut people off on ESL after 3 years. 3 years? 3 years. After 3 years, and you're trying to get that extended to 5 or 6.
It should be extended to 7 because research shows that it takes at least 7 years to become proficient in both.
So the education governor put together a bunch of task force this first year in. One was the ELL task force, and I served on that. That was one of our recommendations, was lengthening. The Senate passed every one of our recommendations that we thought would help our children. It hasn't gone anywhere. But what I will tell you is our teachers are working their hiney off trying to support those kids while they take care of every other child in the room. We don't know what that gap is. We do know that if a child comes in reading in their own language, they're ready to go. So there are things our teachers know, but we need people like you to continue to say that.
We can't even get those bills out of the House Education Committee, and then the leadership won't allow those bills to come to the floor when they come over to the Senate.
It's a fundamental belief that Rob, they want every child to succeed, and I'm not feeling that love everywhere. Thank you.
Want to go back here and come back to Gary? Dan? Gary?
Dan.
I've basically got one comment that, and I know we're pretty much on the same page here, but if you look at what's being done with all the cutback and like that, it's almost like a business model for some manufacturing company. And the problem is, we're not making widgets. They're not all the same. And that's what I think a lot of some legislators, administrators, executives in the government, stuff like that, aren't saying. Not making widgets. If we're all making widgets, yeah, we can figure out how to make a little manufacturing technique to, cut the cost but improve the product. Can't do that with education. Not by a long shot.
Robin and then Gary.
You mentioned earlier, Art, that there was a law about what the legislature was supposed to do for education funding. And so I'm wondering if there's a law, usually there's some enforcement provision in that law, and I wonder what that is. Is it just a ballot box? And so this law is really meaningless, or what is it?
Right, because the majority of rules in the House, and they make the rules, they make the laws, and that's the law that they're at 30 days after the governor gives his budget, we're to pass the K-12 education funding. But they ignore that. To enforce it, I guess you have to have something filed with the Senate. The House would have to vote to do that. Send it to the Senate, have hearings. I believe that's how it would work, just like it does in Congress. That's not going to happen.
Well, and again, I take it back to, we could force them to do it, and they could say, okay, we'll follow the law, it's 1%. And they've done their job. So that I think it's a real catch-22 on if that would be a smart thing to spend taxpayers' money on fighting that, or spend our money trying to take care of our kids.
On the positive note, Rusty, who you vote into office, if you vote more Democrats into office, they will no longer have the majority. They won't be able to pack all of the committees, move all the bills, or stop everything. They have ultimate power there because they have a majority. This is the way it is. So that's why the Senate is so critical that they have a Democrat majority in the Senate. Gary?
We've talked quite a bit about it just does not have the funding. Certainly, Suzanne School Board can see that. there is, we're not adequately funded school. Sat down with a legislator who's not in this room and probably would never be in this room. And he explained to me, you know, why, what's up, Gary, why there just isn't any money. And he had the flip charts, and he had the, you know, he had all the figures, and someone said, you know, there's just no money here. We just can't do it. You know, there's just no money. What's the response?
About your priorities. There's $7 billion, and they decide where each of those dollars gets spent. So it depends on what your priorities are.
How much was given back in tax?
And education,
Yeah,
they can do that first.
262 million last year for commercial property tax cuts.
You didn't
That was
mention
in-
that.
What?
I said that wasn't.
That wasn't good.
And they did find 200 million, you could correct me on this too if I'm wrong, that could go to private school,
Yeah, 220 million.
220 million. But when that didn't go through, they did have 220 million that did go to public schools. So 220 million that could help about 50,000 kids or so versus 500,000 kids.
Right. The problem I
It
have
was there
with
for a
that,
while, sorry.
that's right. No, I have a problem with that. And the problem with that is that with that $220 million, it would really, and for the most part, just replace the money that parents are using to send their students to private schools. So it doesn't have any public good, and it doesn't help scholarships for other kids who are poor go to a different school. And it really isn't about school choice.
It's not about choice, no.
It's about the money.
I'd like to finish, maybe kind of wrap, sort of, we're kind of getting near the end of the hour. And I want to say, I was going to ask this as a question, I'm just going to say it instead, that'll be quicker. We've got 33 days until voting starts, and in Lynn County alone, we can chop the margin of the House in half. If we can get Molly elected, keep Todd Taylor's got an opponent, Liz Bennett has an opponent, Art's free, Kirsten's free. So those four, and we can get Molly elected, and we can get Dick Whitehead elected, and we can get Mark Seidel elected, and we chop that margin that they have basically in half in Lynn County alone. I think we can do it. There are two things that have to happen. There are simply two things. And first of all, those three candidates we have running, Molly and Dick Whitehead and Mark Seidel, are really, really strong advocates for education. And Dick, longtime superintendent out at Prairie, who actually I think got along with the Education Association. Molly, of course, which we met tonight, is great. Mark's had kids go through Linn-Mar system, really strong advocate for the public schools. We've got to do three things between now and then. Number one, we've got to raise money for these candidates. You know, I don't know where we're at money-wise, but each one of those three candidates is probably going to need at least $100,000 to win. I don't know how close they are to $100,000. So that's number one. So if you got more money, plan on spending a lot of it between now and September 29th on these candidates, because they really need the money in time so they can know what they can do. Number two, we've got to get voters thinking about education in ways other than mail and letters, mail and TV ads and radio ads. So right now is a time for people to start writing those letters to the editor, to start talking up. We need to come up with some public event we can do that we publicize to the TV stations, maybe mid-September, to get people thinking about education. Because it's not always, voters sometimes think, well, I like these candidates when they're thinking about these issues, and they like these candidates when they're thinking about other issues. And our challenge is to get people understanding that education is one of a handful of small core issues in this fall's election. So anything you can do, I posted something on social media to remind people, and it's also got to be simple. I was just reminding people, Branstad vetoed $56 million that we had negotiated actually with House Republicans to get.
6 extra weeks.
It took 6 extra weeks and we got $56 million and he vetoes it. Well, so we've got to have people understanding that's the decision. Because did House Republicans do a thing about that, Art? No. Were Senate Democrats prepared to override that veto? Yes, we were. But you can't do it when you don't have both houses willing to do it. And then the final thing we need to do is we need to make sure there's time so that anybody who's on social media here gets a picture with Art State and Tammy Wiro that they can share on their Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook accounts. What?
Snapchat.
Did you give all those words to your dad?
I thought I lighted it up there. So, but final thing I want to say about this. I told you we can get half of it in Lynn County alone. Let me tell you, we have the highest quality candidates for the Iowa House of Representatives across our state since I've been in this business for 14 years, and the #1 issue that is motivating them is education. And we can pick up half of it here, they can get the other half in Polk County alone, and then you start picking up Gary Kroger in Cedar Falls, and Keene up in Anamosa, and we go down to Ryan Drew, and we go right, Matt Hanlon and Tim Hayhall and.
Do the hurricane scream now.
That's for Robin. So we can do this. We've got great candidates: Sarah Huddleston in Storm Lake, and Perla Alicorn Flory in Sioux City, and Steve Gorman in Council Bluffs, and Dave Grussing up in Esterville. We've got the candidates to do it. We've got to get people focused on the legislative races, right?
Right.
Every voter in the state of Iowa knows about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And obviously we got to win that race, right? But we've also got to get people excited about these races on the rest of the ballot so that we can take back the Iowa House and provide a real check to Terry Branstad for the last 2 years of his last administration. Let's do it!
Ms. Warren, this is a comment, but I can't remember what position do you all stay Central Mayor?
I am now the labor chair.
You're the labor
Newly
chair.
elected labor chair
Okay,
on the state central.
I want to get this is about body one. I want to.
Thank you.
I want to get it. Thank you. My question is, and it's a twofold question. Remember the comment. What I think should happen in the short term, there should be a massive protest that goes to the point, don't have to happen this year, that will close down the state in terms of the education time. And then also, it's hard to change the state of the Constitution. Instead of it being a law, it should be in the state Constitution that education has to be funded at a certain level. Now, I know changing the Constitution takes some work, so I know, I mean, but I'm saying that ultimately, because these are kids, and I don't have any kids in full disclosure, I have no kids, but kids are investment in the future. That's what they are. They are a fundamental investment. And again, what really should happen, if we don't want to invest in our kids, maybe what we should do, we start at kindergarten, I'm being facetious here, and take all of them and just simply lock them up. And particularly the poor, I mean, I'm serious. If we're not going to do this, it'd be a big outcry throughout the country. We'll get us a big notice, but everybody just simply just lock them up and be done with it. Just simply do that. And we talk about funding and stuff. What is it? And I think y'all gonna have to go there. What are the Republicans' real reason for saying we don't have money in this and that? What's the real reason behind it?
Privatize.
No, not just
I know where you're going, and I know exactly.
Okay, not just to privatize. No.
It's to make a
Okay,
difference between their kids and our kids.
Okay,
You're right.
the whole thing is we're going to create a permanent underclass in this country. And what happened when immigrants came to this country, the United States had a robust education system. People who were willing to apply themselves were able, and I'm talking about the immigrant population, but folks that look like me didn't necessarily at that time participate in that. But basically, we had a robust education system that helped people advance. And by the way, when I went to school, there was 40 kids in the classroom. That's been 45. But that's been over 50 years ago. There were 40 kids. There were 40 kids in point is we need an education that gives kids a universal, quality type of education. And I want to ask you a question. What do you think, this is about what is the real reason why the Republicans, and I think eventually, and whoever else doesn't support, that's the real reason why I think eventually we'll have to craft the argument, but we're going to have to go there.
I'll just say from the national education perspective, we have gone into a really deep dive on institutional racism, and we are having hard conversations. And I can't guess, and I don't want to say what someone's motive is, but what I do know is what's happening and what they're creating is absolutely a two-tiered system, when that is not what our public schools were ever set up to be. So I believe, I don't want to say that that was someone's intent, but that's what will happen.
I want to
We
say
had
this.
two-tiered back in the 1830s, grew out of that, and go backwards again.
I want to say that your very point is what this is all about. We have to protect the opportunity for every child in America, every child in Iowa, to have equal access to the same opportunities, to have a quality education. That's what the public provides. And that has to be protected. It's going to take vigilance, it's going to take a lot of work, we have to continue, because not everybody values that.
And we have to call it out, and we have to say,
I think we're not saying that we design Jim Crow